when I first saw this synthesizer, I was like, damn, this looks really interesting. This really looks like something I can already get with my Ableton Live. And I was really attracted by the polyrhythm sequencer, but also by all of this oscillator and sub oscillator that you can detune. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be perfect to create some kind of weird hypnotic melody. And earlier this year, I finally decided to get one, but all of my dream of hypnotic melody and wiki sequence and kind of a dream synthesizer kind of quickly fade away, because when I realized how long it was taking me to actually achieve something I like with the machine. And I'm gonna be honest, it's really hard to get something good out of it, and mainly because you have two main features which are kind of uncommon, so the polyrhythm sequencer and the oscillator and the sub oscillator, which leave a lot of room for unpleasant sound. But after spending some time experimenting, and even if sometimes it's a long time, you can manage to create very nice weird sequence. And today I'm gonna show you a little bit my process of how I use it, how I like to use it, and some other tips that I like to use with. So the way I will start a basic patch, more or less, you can see I have all of my sub frequency at the maximum, more or less in the middle. I will choose square, and then I will have just one level up or the rest down, something plucky in terms of the filter. So now the first thing you need to do, you have 4 different rhythms where you can set different clock, and that will trigger the sequencer 1 or 2. And you can, it's kind of the speed basically. And you can do, for example, another one with sequencer 2. Something like this. And I will usually tweak until I find something I like, and then I will focus more on the oscillator. So I'm gonna swap to sawtooth because I kind of rather sawtooth. So the way you're gonna tune is obviously what you are looking for, but I will usually keep it simple at first, and maybe you can set all of the oscillator at the same note but at different octaves. That's something cool you can do. I will talk about this more later. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend to go too crazy at first. And same now with the oscillator too, you can kind of and then when I have set my oscillator to something I like, then you can start maybe to shape a bit more, use sequence. I like this to have a plucky sequence with a short decay, strong filter envelope. And then you can start to shape your melody. So for the melody, as you can see, they are all at the same pitch. I put them all in the middle. That's something I like to do. So like this, they all have the same pitch at starting. So I will usually put it in the center, but it requires a bit of time to kind of set all of the pitch. Or otherwise I will put them all at the maximum or all at the minimum. And then after I will like kind of tweak the way I want, but yeah, once you have a sequence I like the rhythm, I like the melody, maybe I can try to have some extra harmonics with the oscillator. One thing I like to do, what I like to use is maybe having a simple melody like this, and then I will live add some extra harmonics. So I will set you can decide the sub to follow the sequencer as well. So I like this slight detune effect. I like this one. So then after, when you have something, like I like to do like kind of doing my shopping, like I would just pick up the one Even sometimes what can happen, I will not even use the main oscillator, I will just use the sub oscillator. Obviously, that depends what you like, but that will be my basic approach. Then after, obviously, you can keep finding something you want. You can patch something. So now I'm going to show you different kind of a bit more advanced tips that I like to use with the Subharmonicon. So my go-to things to have a sound which is kind of more techno, let's say, it's using the pulse width modulation and modulating this with LFO. So as you can see here, I have my VCO2 pulse width modulation, VCO1, and I'm gonna modulate with triangle LFO from the Moog 32. And this is without, and with, you can hear it add a lot of excitement and make the sound a bit more stressful. So that's my first tip. Second tip, which is kind of life changer. If like me you think like the melody are a little bit too boring, like just 4 different notes is quite hard, even if you can create polyrhythm with. A great way is to use another external sequencer to modulate your melodies. So here I'm gonna use the DFAM pitch sequencer to modulate the VCO1 and VCO2. So you can see VCO1, VCO2 here, and I'm just gonna be modulated by the pitch of the DFAM. And that's a completely game changer. I don't know why I didn't think about this before. It took me like a couple of months to use it, but I was like, damn. And now you get a way much more complex melody because you have the 8-step pitch of your DFAM. But the thing as well that I didn't expect it is like the pitch here still affects the VCO. So basically if I change, it changed the melody. So that's pretty cool. Then after you can just bring a beat. To go. Alright, so if you are in the case that you don't have a DFAM or you don't have external controller, you just have the Subharmonicon and you want to take the best out of it, one thing you can do is use the sequencer to here, you can see the output go in the pitch of the VCO1. So here in that case, I just have the sequence 1. Then if I plug sequencer 2 into the VCO1, I start to get a more complex sequence. And here again, if you don't have external LFO to modulate your pitch width modulation, by default, when you basically switch in the middle, the first VCO it's a square waveform, but then the sub 1 frequency it's basically what gonna do your pulse width modulation. So you can use that as a pulse modulation and kind of create real tone that you want. Now, in terms of the sequence, how I came up with this, you can see most of them, they are pitched down. So what I'm usually doing is I bring all of the step down And then I would just have like, here you can see I've just have like one pitch up. And on the second one I have two. And this way it's avoid to have too much different notes, which result in most of the time in cheesy melody. And so that's the tips I can give you. And as well, to set the rhythm, to have this kind of nice sequence, what I like to do is I will usually start with quite a slow sequence. Make sure they have different time, obviously, but slow. You can see that this is barely usable. But then I will apply a fast rhythm to both of them. So that's what I've done with rhythm 3. And if you press reset, so this will get you more classic kind of 16-step sequence, but then you have some weird shift. So the step by itself, I don't think they are like kind of polyrhythm, but like the way the pitch play, I think there is a kind of a shifting a little bit. But at the end, it's create a nice sequence, so that's all what matters. Alright, so I have another tip. Like sometimes I will find a sequence. I kind of like the pitch, I kind of like the groove, but I still feel it's missing something, especially if you put it after with kick drum, it's kind of feel a bit weird. It's not bad, but it's missing something, so I'm gonna do exactly the same than what I've done before. I'm gonna use the sequencer to pitch the VCO1. Just to add this kind of weird complex melody. And then I'm gonna use the sequencer 1 to modulate one of the rhythms. So what I will usually do is I will modulate a rhythm where there is no sequencer 1 modulated. So for example, I'm not gonna use rhythm 1 because there is sequencer 1 which is affected by the rhythm 1. So I'm gonna use rhythm 2. And press reset to kind of and now you have something. Right, another way I like to use the Subharmonicon is obviously because you have 6 oscillators, you can kind of create rich soundscape, drone sound, or even kind of pad sound. So here I've got my Subharmonicon. You can see it's sequenced by Ableton, and I'm not using the sequencer. And you can see I did activate the envelope, so this way it's playing something like more sustain. And let me open the. I wanted to show this example as well because it's something a bit more less weird. Let's say that's what I've shown until now. And here again, how you set your oscillator, it's really up to you what you are looking for. Don't start, my advice is, as usual, don't try to be over complicated or super complex, because it's then very hard to kind of create nice harmonic things and having a great result. But yeah, this will be the right case where I use the resonance, because usually I don't really like the resonance, but here I kind of like this resonance filter effect into a lot of reverb. It's nice, and I don't mind to lose a little bit of the low end. Now obviously if you want to create a real tone, what you can do is hold the EG button and it will play continuously. And then you can create something. So if you want something a bit weirder this time, again, maybe go one after. So I can Alright, so I wanted to show you a technique I like to do. It's kind of a mega oscillator, and basically it's combining different waveform at the same pitch but at different octave. So let me just explain to you. So when you have your waveform in the middle, so the top oscillator VCO1 will be a square waveform, and then both sub oscillator will be sawtooth. And the idea is to bypass the pulse width modulation. So I'm gonna do this for oscillator 1 and 2, but you can bypass it. And the thing this way, now you have a sawtooth, you have your square, and then you have another sawtooth. So the idea is to have the same waveform but at different octave. They all play the same pitch. So like for example here, it's C sharp. I'm gonna make sure that all of the oscillators are in C sharp, but then at different octave and different depending the waveform. So for example, here I have the sawtooth, and then it's a sawtooth at a different octave. And the idea is to create a very rich sound. And I've done exactly the same for VCO2. So you can see I'm in the middle again, and I've bypassed as well the pulse width modulation. So this way, this is not like changing the tone of this one. This is very important because otherwise it will change the pitch. And here again, C sharp with the square. C sharp with a sawtooth. And there's another sawtooth. But you can hear that all the sawtooths at different octave, and my two square as well are at a different octave. So none of them is the same sound basically, but it's still the same note. So you get this kind of afterlife kind of sound. And so then you can use your external MIDI controller, you can use the sequencer, but one thing, if you want things to don't get messed up, you have to decide that the sequencer one's gonna control obviously your VCO2. So this way now, and you have to deactivate this one. So this way now Alright, so let's say you like the polyrhythm sequence that you have, but you feel like you don't have enough steps to sequence the pitch, and so you want to use an internal sequencer to modulate the pitch. And if you are lucky and you have a GFAM, you can use the head step for the GFAM, for example, or if you can grab a Korg SQ1. And the idea is to basically use the rhythmical sequence to trigger each step of the GFAM, and then having the 8 different pitch, and then going back into the Subharmonicon. And we're gonna go even a bit more complex. So first thing you want to do is sequencer 1 clock that you want to trigger the DFAM. And so this way you can see the DFAM sequencer is following exactly the same speed and movement than the Subharmonicon. So that's what we wanted. Now we want to take the pitch from this step to reintroduce into the Moog Sub Harmonicon. And the cool thing you can do is here you have velocity and pitch. So you can, for example, use the pitch to sequence the VCO1, and you can use the velocity sequencer to sequence the VCO2. So this way you get even more complex and weird stuff. So you're gonna get your pitch into VCO1. I've as well put the sub oscillator, and you can do the same with the velocity into the VCO2. And you got a very weird sequence. So now to make things even a bit more complex, what I've done is basically actually this sequencer pitch control the sub oscillator 2. So the sub oscillator 1 is down but 2, so it's already something cool. But then after you can even Now use the pitch of this one, and instead of controlling your main oscillator, you can decide to just control your sub oscillator to have even more weird tones. Obviously, the more complex you get, the harder it will to get a melody, but once you get something cool, it's good. So in order to how you're gonna set the pitch here, it's quite hard obviously because it's quite random and you don't have an exact note, and but I'm gonna use exactly the same technique done before. You can use trigger and move to each step. So I will recommend to maybe remove your sub oscillator. And then be a bit more. And I will usually tweak until I have both together, something I like. But obviously, yeah, it requires a lot of experimentation, but then once you got something you like, and one thing you can do as well, if you want even something a bit weirder, you can use the trigger out of the GFAM and go in the trigger in. And yeah. And obviously you can do exactly the same with the Korg SQ1. So, which will be basically, you take your clock, you put into the sync in, and then you have your CVA going into the first VCO. So I don't have like double cable long, so I cannot do it. But you get the idea. CVB up into VCO2, and here's the same. You can maybe then take the sync out into the trigger, I'm not quite sure that the clock is responding well on the SQ1, but and you can obviously tweak. But yeah, you get the idea. So my final opinion about it, it's a great machine. I just love it. It takes a lot of time to experiment until you get something. That's I think why I like it as well. If you're looking for a synth to have quick results, don't go for it because that's not what it's about. But if you like to experiment, try different things, even spending time, like enjoying spending time, like just tweaking knobs, yeah, that will be definitely something for you. But it can be frustrating sometimes because you can spend hour and you still doesn't get something, or you get something very basic. But obviously I feel it's a machine that the more you play with it and the more you will learn it, the more you will be able to achieve quicker results. And I can feel already right now how long it takes me to make a great patch compared to at the beginning. But yeah, it might not be for everyone, but I really love personally. Right guys, I hope you liked this video. Thank you very much for watching and see you soon guys. Bye bye.